Alright guys, check it out. Today on American Heritage Garage, it is officially cold out. I think winter is here. I had to turn the heat on. As you can see, I got the shop door closed. It's not my favorite season. I like to have fresh air in here, but whatever, that's just the season change. As you see, I got the 40 Chevy back in here. Gonna mess around with the fuel system a little bit, work on the carb today, get that off, get going on the rebuild kit with that. Then I'm gonna pull the fuel tank down, I think, at least try to, see how bad it is. Try to clean it out a little bit, maybe blow the fuel lines out, do some other little stuff like that. Right after I pulled it in, I messed around with a little bit of wiring, rewired the generator, and I think I showed you the coil wire fix. I'll jump in here and show you that in just a second. Some of the wiring is in pretty bad shape on this thing, but it's like 80 years old, so that happens. Anyway, like I said, we got some progress going. I did try to crank it over yesterday, and with the starter, it does crank over. It was a little slow, so I got the battery out there on the charger. That being said, let's get to it. So last time we were in here, we messed around, re-gapped all the spark plugs, double checked all the wires, double checked the timing and everything, set the points down in the distributor. That's all good. And then I came up with a solution for our ignition wire, the armored ignition cable that runs in through the in the firewall up to the ignition switch itself. And got that wire fixed up, so we'll have some power at the ignition, or at the coil, excuse me. Here is the piece of armored cable that I cut off. This would have been a cap that sat on the coil, and the wire runs up through this. It's actually it's kind of the first anti-theft device. So they put that in there so you couldn't hotwire it. So the wire would run through the center of that, but it was all nasty and broke off, and there wasn't enough to splice onto, and I didn't want to short anything out on the inside of here. So I just took my die grinder, and I just real carefully cut around, and I was able to slip it off the wire without damaging the wire at all, and we made a little splice here, and we're good to go. So we got that going. On this side, I went in. Cleaned up the generator a little. We can see the armature terminal up or down there, and the field terminal there. Ran the new wires up here to the voltage regulator. So got some new wires in there. The old ones were just in bad shape. A lot of these wires are. See, we got some exposed wire here. This old fabric insulation is just degraded over time, rubbing on stuff, and there's some more right there over here. So that's going to probably pose a problem at some point. That stuff's not too bad, but I just think in the getting it running initially, it shouldn't be too bad. So we're going to jump in here and work on this carburetor. A couple lines, fittings, choke cable, couple bolts, get the carb off. Break into that and get the rebuild kit done. Real quick here. Here's my two wires that were, let's see if this washes it out now. My two wires that were going to the generator. So like I said, this fabric insulation just over time just doesn't hold up, just comes apart, see? So anywho, we'll get set up and get that carburetor off and get to work on that. So I yanked the air filter off here. I thought this was an oil bath, but the more I look at it, I'm not 100% sure if it is or not. There's no real way to get it to separate. So I thought there'd be a way to put oil in it, but it might not be. Here's your warning label: washing gasoline, filter element only, every 2,000 miles, blah, blah, blah. Or oftener. Oftener, that's interesting. If you're under dusty conditions, re-oil with engine oil drained through before. So I'm thinking, here's your filter element. It sits up on top of here. Then you got your lid. So I'm thinking you clean this off and just soak this in oil. I think. And then you got your, down through your, into your carb there, the throat of your carb. So here's the front. I don't know, we'll see. I'll do some reading, but I think you just oil that. So that's interesting. Something else I wanted to show you guys real quick before I get everything all set up. Something I always do with my, anytime there's hard lines. You know, this kind of, when you got a flare nut, just to prevent twisting of this line, I get some penetrating oil, fluid, whatever you like to use, PB Blaster, Croil, Seafoam, Deep Creep, WD-40, whatever you want to use. And I let it sit on there for a couple minutes, and then I hit right around the edge of the nut and try to get any sort of rust, corrosion, dirt, grime, dust, whatever, built up grease and oil off of this guy, off of the line. Just so the flare nut itself has an easier time spinning on the line, then you don't have as much of a chance of twisting your line. So you got to pay attention to that, because this line could twist anywhere down here. Like this little guy is a lot thinner, so it's back here, right here. So we're going to be careful with that, clean that up real good. Then there's another one right there. So I'm going to knock that out real quick and get those off, but I'm going to get you set up here and we'll do this together. We're going to get in here and get the lines off. This one back here. Choke cable off. And then the two nuts that hold the carburetor to the intake manifold. And really that should be about it. Nothing too crazy. So we got a screw here holding the choke cable on. I have a feeling this might be a little bit of a hassle. I think this is kind of not. So we are going to get this carb off. We got to get this line, and this one back here off, the choke cable off, and then the two nuts that hold the carburetor itself to the intake manifold. Shouldn't be too crazy. See if we can get this choke cable off. They have, I don't believe this is the original setup. Not 100% sure. I'm going to see if I can make this work. It's kind of in here in a bit of a goofy way, so I'll show you once it's off how they have it. But something I've noticed about this older stuff, man, it just doesn't seem to rust the same. Like, screws and stuff aren't rusted in tight. Normally you'd be ripping the heads off. Just trying to get screws loose on modern vehicles. It's kind of nuts. So makes life a little easier, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. So yeah, we'll just keep plugging away here and get this guy off of here. So there's, no, that's gone. Find that later. That's what they got holding the choke cable on here. They had it through the throttle linkage and clamped onto the end of the cable there. So throttle linkage comes right off, leans out of the way. Get this guy here. So this has a throttle set that you can set from inside. So you can set the throttle and use the foot pedal starter. So actually, now that I'm looking at it, that's what this is. This is the choke cable over here. we'll get that all set right once we put it back together. No big deal, easy stuff. Just a little bit of time. So there's those things. Real quick, important to me, not to everybody, using line wrenches, flare nut wrenches, whatever you want to call them. It's just a little bit of cheap insurance when you're taking these fittings off, flare nuts. I don't anticipate this being real difficult. I might, if I can find the right size. Look at that, there she goes. So we'll crack this guy loose, see what happens here. Put a little pressure against it. Look at that. That's what I like. Man, that's easy stuff right there. No problem. Cracked it loose. Like one turn, off by hand. A little bit of spring action going on there. No big deal. So we get this one back here. That is how you knock the whole hood down on your head. This hood only weighs like 148 pounds, so that'd be alright. That one's also real nice and loose. I'm starting to really like this thing. No problem. Flare looks pretty good on that guy. And we'll get this last thing back here. Also no problem. No twisted lines. That means not making any new lines. That means I am happy. This one's got a little more pressure on it. Get it loosened up with a regular wrench. Good stuff. That won't come the rest of the way out, I think. Oh, there she goes. All right. So now, try to crack these guys loose. You can get to this one with a socket. You can't get to that one with a socket. So we'll just see what happens here. So far, so good. It's not turning the whole stud, so I'm not going to complain. This quite possibly could be the easiest carb removal I've ever done. Knock on wood. Try from the other side to get this other side off. Can't even get the box end in here, so we'll have to do this with the open end. I'm not even 100% sure. It really doesn't look like the nut's going to be able to come off. It looks like you got to kind of put it on as you go, just by looking at the way it sits down on the carb. But the carb's already loose, so that's no big deal. We'll just lift it up on the stud as we loosen the nut off. Just a little coordination. No big deal. They are tight on these threads though, on the studs. They're not spin off with your finger loose, that's for sure. But I don't think there's any sort of damage to the studs or anything. I just think that's the way it is. I am a true firm believer in the mass production back in the old days was considerably more valued than it is now. Everything was heavier duty, just better made. I really am a firm believer in that. Oh, that's never a good thing. Too much PB Blaster, slippery fingers. But I gotta stand by. Now if we lose this one, we're in trouble. Then I gotta go digging. One thing that's a pain about this car when you're old like me, these fenders, you gotta lean way over these fenders to get into the hood, but I guess there's worse things to complain about. If you watch my F-150 video, that's quite different procedures than doing something like this, so I should count my blessings. Alright, last couple turns, this carb will be off. There we go. One really old carburetor. Take it over to the bench and get rebuilding on it. So we got the carb up on the bench here. We're going to get taking it apart. We'll take the top portion off first. Several screws around the top. Something I recommend to everybody who's going to rebuild a carb and do drum brakes and do all kinds of other stuff. Photo document, right? We have that capability now to have a camera like at our fingertips at all times. So take a picture of each side. You've got all kinds of springs and different levers and things that need to go back in a specific location, little tiny springs and stuff. It's very important that you guys that you keep track of that, because if you don't, you're going to be hurting when you go to put this thing back together. It's just something I like to do. It's a habit I've gotten into with the high school kids, just because if you don't know, high school kids lose everything. So they have a tendency just to put stuff in a bucket and call it good. So we'll try to keep everything pretty organized here and laid out. I did for the hot rod, the Model A. That is going to have a 4-deuce setup. So if you're not familiar with that, that's 4 two-barrel carbs, specifically Rochester 2Gs, kind of in the styling of American Graffiti, which is my absolute lifetime favorite movie, and somewhat of inspiration for my project car in the first place. Unfortunately, I can't afford a 32 Ford, so it's going to be a poor man's deuce, which is a 31 on 32 rails. So yeah, I did a whole bunch of Rochester 2Gs. I had 6 cores, actually I had 8 cores, and I ended up rebuilding 4 of them. Even over here in the box I still have some. So that was a learning lesson. By all means, I am no master carb rebuilder. There are guys out there that do this still as a day job. Not for the general public's use necessarily, but for guys that are into hot rodding and want different carb setups. I used a guy, and he was out of Montana. www.hotrodcarbs.com. His name's Larry Fulton. Real good guy. He knows Rochesters like the back of his hand. So if you're interested in getting some Rochesters, get a hold of that guy, because he'll take care of you. I'm still pretty old school. I hate that carbs are a dying thing, but they are. So we gotta preserve the knowledge of rebuilding these things. It can be a lot of fun. It's nice little time-consuming work. I don't know. I like doing it. So hopefully it's not too boring watching me do this, but I'll try to keep talking. I've never rebuilt this old of a carburetor, so we'll see how it pans out. Once we get the top off, we'll do a quick little inspection of everything. See, like there's one of those crazy little things that sits in there that you really need to know how that goes back on there, otherwise you'll be in trouble. That's got to go around this little guy. That's where taking pictures and photo documenting is a big deal. So yeah, we'll do a quick inspection of everything and see what we're looking at here in just a second. I don't think there's anything else holding it on. I hope the kit that I bought is a good kit. So we got one piece here. I always try to watch what we're pulling out here. That way you know when things go back together. And something else I've learned, very valuable. Don't flip these things upside down until you really look at them. Okay? So here we got an accelerator pump and a float. So we'll set that off to the side. There's little check balls down in the fuel bowls. Sometimes. Try to zoom you in here a little bit more. Down in here that'll fall out. So yeah, be careful with that. You don't want to lose this stuff when you're in the process of putting stuff back together. Okay, so there's that portion. Next we'll get this portion off here. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Once this thing gets apart and we check everything, yeah, this choke is like frozen shut, so that's gonna be some effort. I can't see because I can't move the float. Nice flashlight. Hey, look at that. There we go. See what's holding me up in there. Okay, so we got to take this guy out right here to get that out. So that we'll have to remember. Nope, that's not it. That's just a jet. Another one down in there. Yeah. Something you're going to need is a variety of screwdrivers. There's different angles and stuff you got to go at, so this is going to come all the way out here. Now she'll come apart. There we go. That was being held into this hole right here. If you can see that right there. A little blurry, but so that's got to make sure that's got to go right down in the right spot. We'll keep this stuff together up and over here. It's not super dirty, so that's a good thing. This little freaking squirrel mouse nest stuff. Pretty self-explanatory, which is good. Not seeing anything that's gonna make this real challenging, so pretty rudimentary. That one's gonna give me some issues. Now remember too, this stuff is brass, so you want to put a lot of pressure and nice smooth, easy movements. You don't want to go yanking on it because you tear that brass up and you're in trouble. I think that's a little copper washer, but it's not going to come out of there, so. Needle valve here, adjustment. So I'm doing a quick look through and not seeing anything that looks too crazy. There's definitely some dust and dirt in there. Granted, it just hasn't been used in a while. That's what that's from. But I'm not seeing anything that looks like it's going to pose a real big issue. Like I said, we got a kit for it. We'll get this thing soaking in the tank overnight. And yeah, I don't know if I have the bushings for the throttle and the choke shafts in the kit. We'll see, hopefully, because I'm going to take them out of here so they get cleaned up. Orientation is extremely important here, so find a way that you'll remember how this goes back in. Like, so with let me get you in the camera here. With this lever down, like this, we close the throttle valve there, and the screw faces the straight back, so just so when we're putting it back together, we get it right. But really, that's about it. Like I said, this is gonna go in the soaker tank overnight, the Carb, whatever the heck it's called, and get cleaned up, and we'll get back at it tomorrow, guys. Got all my pieces stripped down here. Just wanted to show you real quick. Again, not much to it. Pretty simple setup. As you can see back here along the back, I got all the pieces and parts and different stuff set up. So we are going to break open the Napa carb cleaner and put everything in there. This has most definitely been used before, but keep the lid on it and it won't evaporate on you. Shake everything off pretty good. We'll be all right. We'll put the big piece in first. Seems to fit, no problem. See if I can get that guy to fit in there, no problem. Then this guy can go in upside down, like that. We're good to go. Heck, we'll even throw this in here just to get it cleaned up. This stuff works pretty good. It'll have everything cleaned up pretty nice. Get everything soaked up. So use it. So I'm going to put the lid on this and we'll wrap it up for the night, let it sit overnight. We are back at it. The carb parts have soaked overnight. We're going to open them up, let them drip in here a little bit, and then we are going to take them out to the parts washer, give them a scrub down, blow everything off real good, get them dry. Then we will come back in and proceed to rebuild. So let's pull some of this stuff out of here. Like I said, let it drip dry. It's usually pretty surprising how much even the rust this gets off. We're going to leave that there. One. Forgot, what was there, 3 pieces in here? See how clean those come out of there? Well, you can't really. Here, let me get. See, they come out of there looking pretty clean. It gets a lot of that gunk and rust and junk and carbon, and that choke moves real nice now. So these things, this carb cleaner, you can get them anywhere. Auto parts stores, all the name brand, AutoZone, O'Reilly's, Advanced, they all have them. And then of course your Napas and CarQuests and other ones have them as well. So let's like I said, try to drip dry it as best as possible to save everything that you can, because this stuff is pretty expensive. So we're good there. We'll close that up and we will run this stuff out to the parts washer, hose it off, and see what we got when we come back. So kind of a bummer. The kit that I got from Napa for this carburetor, the Carter W1, doesn't seem to fit. It doesn't have all the right parts. The gaskets are wrong. What are you going to do? It's not Napa's fault. This rarely happens. We were on the phone for a while, and they said they're showing the kit that I got for like from 32 all the way to 62. However, doing a like 2 seconds worth of internet research, I found out that Carter made 128 different versions of the Carter W1. So I can't stress enough, if you're doing something like this, no matter what kind of carb, Rochester, Holly, Carter, anything, throughout all the different years, make sure you got the right stuff before you put it in. You don't want to put the wrong kit on. They made all different types of these and different models and variations and changed things and the way the bowl is and different stuff, just in minute little differences. Not a big deal. It's going to set us back a couple days, but whatever. This is a winter project anyway. I'm not planning on having it done like immediately. But I get anxious and I want to get it started. So we're probably going to end off here with this, and we'll come back to it once we get it down the road. I'm going to jump in on the rest of the fuel system here pretty soon. Try to get the tank down, like I said, if that's possible. See, hopefully it comes down without tearing anything up too bad. And get everything cleaned out, get that washed out, rinse some gas around in it, blow it out, do all that fun stuff, blow the fuel lines out, and hopefully by that time we have everything to put this back together. So I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you liking and subscribing and hitting the bell and commenting and doing all that stuff. Like I said, it's a ton of fun, and I enjoy having you guys for the ride. So until next time, we'll see you out here at American Heritage Garage.